Hey, what is going on guys, it's Sarge, and in today's video I'm going to talk about the weapon hotfixes and all the hotfixes that happened yesterday for Borderlands on September 27th, so drop a like on the video if you enjoyed, and let's get started. Now to start off with the weapon hotfixes, we have the sniper rifles. Firstly, they were having their critical damage increased by 20%, their fire rate was increased by 15%, time to aim down sight was reduced by 15%, and time to equip was reduced by 20%. Developers say that sniper rifles deal high damage but felt a little cumbersome to use in certain scenarios. This change will increase their overall damage output and increase usability in more combat engagements. Honestly, this was a change that was really needed since sniper rifles were really useless in this game since you wanted to be more fast paced, and sniper rifles had to keep you more center grounded and you wouldn't be able to use them all that much. So this will be really good since you'll be able to use them almost in any situation, which is really good. Now for pistols, they did increase the damage for all of the TDR pistols by 15%, all the damage for the doll pistols by 15%, all the Children of the Vault pistols by 20%, but they also reduced the damage of Jacob pistols by 15% and Torque pistols by 10%. So I don't really understand why they reduced the damage of some of the pistols. Honestly, I would have just said they can reduce like the splash damage of the Torque pistol and maybe the ricochet on the Jacob pistols. I don't really understand reducing damage, but I guess they're the developers, they understand. But reducing damage in the game is just going to make people want to go to the other three pistols, and no one's really going to use the other ones anymore. I don't really understand it. But it did say that Jacob and Torque pistols were outperforming other manufacturers, dealing damage to groups of enemies at a much higher rate than other pistols. This change keeps their identity intact but reduces overall group control. TDR, Doll, and Children of the Vault pistols have manufacturer penalties that affect their overall damage. Increasing their overall damage will overcome some of the penalties while retaining their unique gameplay style and feel. I understand that they want to reduce the damage just for their uniqueness, but I don't see how that's really a solution. Just making the enemies harder would have been a lot better, and giving us something like a not true Vault Hunter mode, an ultimate Vault Hunter mode would have been way more effective than that. Now as for the Maliwan manufacturers, they did increase all of Maliwan's weapon damage by 25% and all their weapon fire rate was increased by 20%. Maliwan's weapons had a reduced overall damage because they applied elemental dots at a rate of and damage greatly above their other manufacturers. This effect was toned down before launch, but the overall damage was not sufficiently adjusted to compensate for the reduction in elemental dots. We've added back some of the overall damage and making the weapons faster so elemental builds can really take advantage of Maliwan weaponry. So I'm pretty sure this would be really good for FLAKK and a lot of other elemental type builds. Now as for Atlas manufacturers, all Atlas weapon damage was increased by 25%, and the developers say Atlas weapons relied on a game loop that we felt gave players a greater advantage when used correctly. Turns out the loop is not used if the damage doesn't compensate for the time to set up, so now damage on Atlas weapons should facilitate players using them in a general, on top of feeling badass when they take advantage of Atlas technology. So I'm guessing we're just going to have an overall damage increase across the board, which is really good since Atlas guns do need that increase. I don't really use them all that often, and they're pretty cool, but having this damage increase would probably give me more reason to use them. And some miscellaneous adjustments. Jacob Assault Rifle's damage was increased by 20%, Doll SMG damage was increased by 10%, Vladov Heavy Weapon damage was increased by 25%, and E-Tech TDR Shotgun damage was increased by 50%, so straight buffs down the board, which is really good. And they say that Jacob Assault Rifle change was to differentiate the Assault Rifle from the pistol as more of a mid to long range powerhouse. Since the Assault Rifle had a lower magazine size compared to the other Assault Rifles, they're getting a slight increase to overall damage to compensate. Doll SMGs have their fire rates adjusted down before launch, but their damage was never sufficiently increased, so they should feel more appropriate compared to other SMGs. And the Vladov Heavy Weapon damage has been increased to share all the full heavy ammo treatment. Honestly, this is a good change all around since getting more damage output would be good since a lot of the weapons in the game did feel pretty weak, and especially a lot of the legendaries. And especially for legendaries now, we did get some legendary modifications where they say the King's and Queen's Call's fire rate was reduced by 50%, and the Firestorm and Storm-based charge times were reduced to 1 second down from 2. I don't know how I really feel about that. The King and Queen's Call did not really need that fire rate decrease. I don't understand why they think doing this is the solution, but okay, I guess. But the developers say we're going to be making a large comprehensive legendary gear pass, but we've been included in the following changes. King's and Queen's Call were modified to lower the fire rate. The weapon had a limited burst shot count, so overall feel of the gun isn't dramatically affected. I'm guessing they do this because of the fact that FLAKK can get near infinite ammo with this, and he can fire for almost forever with the crit, and since you get ammo back from a crit, it can just loop and loop more, so where he's just firing constantly. I can understand that, but for other characters it doesn't really help. Now as for the Grave Ward, attacks for the Grave Ward now scale based on level, reduce the overall health by 20%, increase resistances to elemental damage, elemental chance resist increased by 70%, elemental resistances increased by 30%, and elemental dot duration taken reduced by 30%. Now they say the Grave Ward's beam attack did not properly scale based on the level, so at higher levels the two beamed attacks hardly phase players, which is true. I never really understood why that thing never really did damage. I always thought it was bugged or they just didn't actually buff it at all, but it really was weak, it didn't even do anything. Players will find his attacks to be more lethal now. In addition, Grave Ward is a very large enemy and is too easily susceptible to elemental damage unlike other large bosses. Elemental damage on Grave Ward is now greatly reduced, but to compensate, Grave Ward's overall health was reduced. Which is good. I guess now we will be able to use more non-elemental weapons to do more damage, and since he is a big target, he will have less health now and it'll be easier to kill him probably in certain circumstances, which will affect some people's builds, but it's actually pretty good overall. Now some miscellaneous changes. Hollow Point's Guardian rank has been temporarily disabled. We plan on addressing this further in a future patch. If you check in the in-game, you will see an asterisk next to the actual perk, where it will say that it's going to be turned on in a different patch, so you will be able to level it up and it won't actually work. So if you want to go past level 75 and to level up your damage tree, you will be able to actually do that now. Vault Hunters should no longer scream when affected by a dot when shields are active. I'm pretty sure this is also like with the Troy thing where it was just constant screaming, so that's pretty good since I don't understand why you would be screaming if you're just getting hit by shields. I never understood that. And vending machines will now be restocked with higher quality item of the day. Honestly, the vending machine items were never useful to begin with, so I guess that's a good change for lower, like, early game, but it doesn't really affect end game players like us too much. Adjusted a visual concern on Malawan shotguns with cryo elements. I don't really know too much about this, but I'm guessing that's a good change for visual concerns, which I guess is okay. And we also have legendary loot drops have been balanced throughout the game. Crew challenge enemies will drop their intended specific loot, and some enemies like Troy and Rampager will be a bit more stingy and no longer drop legendaries every kill. You know, okay, I guess I can understand that. They did drop the same weapons over and over. I'm tired of getting the Quatomizer. I see that every time I fight the Rampager, so it would be really nice to get something different, and give me a reason to actually farm them more often since you get the weapons you want pretty fast. As for the Vault Hunter adjustments, for ZANE, we did get the Digi-Clone damage increase by 38%, the drone damage increased by 50%, the Cryo Bullets damage penalty removed from the actual ability, the drone rocket damage was increased by 50%, and Almighty Ordnance rocket damage was increased by 75%. Developers say that ZANE's gadgets were great at providing additional utility, but lacked impact as players leveled up. And it's true, they didn't really do much, they didn't feel that useful. So we increased the Digi-Clone's damage with all equipped weapons, so the skill can scale better with players as they get to a higher level and harder content. The drone required a lot of players' involvement to take full advantage of its damage output, and increasing the base damage as well as the augments will greatly increase the drone's versatility and reward players with even more use of it effectively. As for Yamara, she did get some nerfs with Guardian Angel health restoration reduced from 100% to 50%, and Glamour damage penalty reduced from 30% to 10%. So I'm guessing this is just a minor nerf for now, and we'll see what they actually do in the future since they didn't really put any note for that. Now as for FLAKK, he did get his Gorillas in the Mist duration reduced from 8 seconds to 6 seconds, and his Gorilla in the Mist critical damage bonus reduced from 50% to 25%. The developers say that Gorillas in the Mist bonus greatly outweighed its penalty to the base skill. We don't want to remove the playstyle completely, but the overall damage output had to be slightly adjusted because it was outperforming other builds. We're monitoring the changes and may make another change to the ammo during another future patch, which I guess is okay since FLAKK did outperform a lot of other characters and a lot of other builds in the game, so I guess a few nerfs to him would be nice, but I hope they don't do too much to him to make him completely useless. So that's pretty much all the changes that came out for yesterday. These are some pretty decent changes. I don't mind some of them, but there are a few that I don't really like with some of the damage nerfs. But overall, this was a good start for all the patch notes. So that'll be the video for today, guys. I hope you guys learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe for more Borderlands 3 content, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.